With 9 months to go until the federal election, Justin Trudeau's cabinet has finally unveiled its plan to combat the possibility of foreign influence having a role in this year's election. The announcement was made this week by Ralph Goodale, the Public Safety Minister, Karina Gould, who runs the Democratic Institutions Department, and Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan. A number of protocols and policies being put in place were announced, and most of them were unobjectionable. In fact, quite good and I would argue long overdue policies to implement to safeguard Canadian elections. For example, the government will be putting a task force together that is specifically designated as the body responsible for investigating and preparing for these things. Senior party leadership officials across the spectrum are going to get classified security briefings about potential threats, foreign and domestic. Social media companies, however, are also being told they have a role to play here, and that is to put in a platform that reins in misinformation. And this is where I have a healthy dose of skepticism about what the federal government is trying to do here. Namely, who gets to define misinformation? You see, Justin Trudeau's government has a long history of lambasting anything remotely critical as being fake news. Gerald Butts loves taking aim at coverage he doesn't like on Twitter as fake news. Catherine McKenna calls it fake news whenever anyone disagrees with her on climate change. In fact, she actually went after a column my colleague Candace Malcolm wrote, calling it fake news for saying that the carbon tax was a tax. And then we have Mark Gerritsen, a Liberal member of Parliament from Kingston, who was in a Twitter exchange with David Aiken, a Global News journalist, and they were talking about the budget, and Mark Gerritsen called something fake news. He later walked it back, but this is the go-to response now from the Liberals, to just throw away anything they don't like and dismiss it as misinformation or fake news. Now, this isn't to say that a few throwaway comments on Twitter are indicative of something more potentially subject to abuse. But let's look at the M103 report. The report that came about from the anti-Islamophobia motion had a significant chunk of it that was devoted to what it called misinformation and the need to ensure that no misinformation is being spread about policy. Well, the Liberals were calling pretty much anyone who criticized M103 out for fake news when people like me were sounding the alarm about parts of it that were very concerning. This was now dismissed in an official government report as being a misinformation campaign. So if the Liberals are trying to make sure that the election is free from influence by foreign actors, I think that's a good idea. If they're putting pressure on social media companies to make sure no misinformation is seeping in, I think they need to do a much better job of explaining what something would have to do to be called misinformation, and more importantly, who gets to make that determination. You see, there is a wide range of opinions, perspectives, and analyses that are going to be offered in an election. People are going to criticize different parties. People are going to hopefully put some news reports out that go right down the middle. But we can't have people that are loyal to a particular government deciding what's misinformation and what's not. And we can't be strong-arming social media companies in putting an editorial perspective on their platforms, more than they already do, to favor one particular government. And even though I think it's paramount that we protect our democracy, we can't do it in a way that threatens free speech. For True North, I'm Andrew Lawton. Right up until the next election, we're going to be sounding the alarm about any misinformation we see, any examples where the mainstream media is missing the mark on coverage. We can't do this alone, though. We need your help. Lend us a supportive hand by joining the Andrew Lawton Heritage Club over at www.truenorthinitiative.com. For just a few dollars a month, you can keep your mind filled with what the mainstream media doesn't want you to see.